Welcome to the Visual COBOL series of presentations. This module will provide an introduction to working with REST web services in Visual COBOL for Eclipse. In this video, I'll discuss some background about web services and go through the process of implementing an existing COBOL program as a web service. Topics covered will include a conceptual overview of a web service, the steps to create a REST web service from an existing COBOL program, how to deploy the web service, creating a generic client program to test a web service, and finally, running the client to test a web service. So to start, what is a web service? One way the term web service is used is to refer to the set of standards and mechanisms enabling software components to be invoked across the web. The term is also used to describe one of the software components being invoked in this manner. Visual COBOL supports the creation of two different types of web services: SOAP, which stands for Simple Object Access Protocol, and REST, which stands for Representational State Transfer. In this video, we'll focus on creating a RESTful web service in Visual COBOL for Eclipse. An application that wishes to make use of a web service, called a client application, can send a request to it and receive a response from it. Visual COBOL REST web services receive and send data in JSON or JavaScript Object Notation format. A common reason for creating a web service is to take an existing piece of business logic, such as a COBOL program, and allow that logic to be integrated into a different application. Visual COBOL allows your new or existing COBOL programs to be easily implemented as a web service, so that their logic can be leveraged by other applications, regardless of the technology or language used by that application. Incoming requests for a web service are typically handled by a web-aware application server. Visual COBOL includes a feature named Enterprise Server, which provides an application server for COBOL web services. Let's take a look at the steps required to implement a COBOL program as a REST web service in Visual COBOL. We'll start with a simple example COBOL subprogram. When called, this program can perform simple arithmetic calculations. The program receives several parameters in the linkage section. One of the parameters, named action, indicates the type of calculation to be performed. Field 1 and Field 2 are values to be used in the calculation, and finally there's a field to receive the result of the requested calculation. The program uses an evaluate statement to interrogate the action parameter and determine which paragraph to perform for the desired calculation. Let's get to work on turning this program into a web service. In Visual COBOL for Eclipse, I'll create a new project named Service Demo. Now I'll import my COBOL program named CalcResult into the project. I'll do this by selecting File, Import, then under General, I'll choose the option to import from the file system and click Next. Next, I'll choose the directory containing the existing source code by clicking Browse and then navigating to my folder named Legacy. Once the import location is selected, I'll choose calcresult.cbl as the file to import and click Finish. Since I have this workspace configured to automatically build when my project changes, the imported program is automatically built. In Visual COBOL for Eclipse, COBOL projects default to creating a native executable file. This type of executable can only be a main program. If I'm building a web service, the executable generated from my program must instead be a type that is callable. Callable executable types can be either native library files or Micro Focus int or gent files. I'll change the type of executable created in this project to be a native library, which on Windows produces a DLL. To do this, I'll go to Project Properties, then drill into Micro Focus, Build Configurations, and COBOL. I'll set the target type to Single Native Library File. I'll change the output name of my DLL to match my program name, CalcResult, and click OK. The project rebuilds and now creates a DLL. Next, we need to create a web service interface definition for our program. This will involve several steps, including giving the web service a name. We'll define the operations that our web service can perform. Multiple operations can be defined for a service, and these can be used to invoke different entry points in a COBOL program, or they can control the execution path. We'll be setting up 2 operations for our COBOL program, related to the addition and subtraction tasks our program can perform. Mapping the program's parameters. We'll map the parameters in the program's linkage section onto standard data types used by web services. This mapping is created using Micro Focus's Interface Mapping Toolkit, or IMTK. Finally, we'll specify which COBOL application server, called an enterprise server, will contain our deployed web service. Now, let's work on creating the web service definition for our program. To start this process, I'll right-click on the program in the COBOL Explorer and choose New REST Web Service. I'll give the web service the name Web REST Calc and choose None for the mapping type. This indicates that I'll manually map each field in the linkage section, while the default option attempts to automatically create mappings. Now I'll click Finish. Now in the COBOL Explorer view, I see I have a new folder in my project named Web Services, and inside of that folder, an entry for my new web service interface has been created. Next, I'll define the first operation for the web service. I'll right-click on the web service and choose New Operation. I'll name this first operation Add. Since my program has only a single entry point, the entry point is already selected. I'll click OK, and the new operation is created. Next, I'll expand the Service Interface Web REST Calc and select the newly defined Add operation. This displays the interface mapper for this web service interface. On the left, the linkage section fields for my program are shown with their COBOL picture clauses. The right side is used to define the characteristics of the interface fields sent to or from the web service. By default in Eclipse, only the Interface Fields pane is displayed on the right. Let's quickly enable 2 other panes that we'll use during this process. From the menu, I'll choose Window Preferences, then drill into Micro Focus, Service Interfaces, and Interface Mapper. I'll check the boxes to show the Reusable Field and COBOL Assignments panes. When I click OK, the right side of the Interface Mapper view is updated to reflect the new panes. To configure an interface field definition, I can drag one of my linkage section fields, Field 1, to the right and drop it in the Interface Fields pane. From here, I can double-click the interface field and fine-tune the data type that will be used to transmit the contents of this field over the web. In this case, I want the field to be treated as an integer. I have the ability to make this specification of the data type for each field that my service is going to receive as input or is going to return to a client as output. This works well, but remember that I'm currently doing this for the add operation. I'll need to define the same fields again when I create the subtract specification. It would be great if there was a way to create a kind of template definition for the common fields that more than one operation will need. Happily, I can do this with the reusable field pane. Let's delete our definition of field 1 and start again. I'll drag field 1 over to the reusable fields pane and set its data type to integer. Now I can drag the field from the reusable fields pane up into the interface fields pane. It shows that it is of type field 1, indicating that it is using the data type I specified for that reusable field. It also shows that the direction of this field is input, which is correct. I'll repeat these actions for field 2 and result. Since result is an output field from my web service program, I'll double-click the field and change the direction. Notice that I did not specify the action field. Since a client will be invoking my web service by specifying an operation of add, I don't really need to also transmit an action field. Instead, I can define a hard-coded value to be placed in this field in the linkage section when this operation is used by a client. I do this by right-clicking on the action field in the linkage section and choosing New Assignment. I'll enter a lowercase a as the value to assign, since this is what my COBOL program checks for in this linkage section field. Notice the assignment now shows in the COBOL Assignments pane. This completes the specification of the add operation. Next, I need to define the subtract operation. I right-click on the Service Interface Web REST Calc and choose New Operation. I won't show all of the steps, since they are basically the same as with the add operation. But notice that the reusable fields are available for me here, so I can just begin dragging the common fields into my Interface Fields pane. Now that we've completed the field mapping, we can define which COBOL application server instance will house our web service. As I mentioned earlier, the Enterprise Server feature of Visual COBOL provides the COBOL application server. When Visual COBOL is installed, an example enterprise server, sometimes called a region, named ESDemo is predefined. For this demo, we'll create a new enterprise server named ESREST, and then use that enterprise server for our web service. Before a web service can be invoked, the service has to be installed or deployed into the enterprise server in which it will run. First, let's get our new ESREST enterprise server region created. I can easily get access to work with my enterprise servers from the Eclipse IDE by going to the Server Explorer view in the COBOL perspective. I'll right-click on the local node and choose Open Administration Page, which opens the administration web page within the Eclipse view. This page shows the currently existing enterprise servers. I'll scroll to the bottom of the page and click Add. There are 3 pages to the Add Server dialog. On the first, I'll enter the name ESREST, choose the bit mode I want to use, and click Next. On the second, I'll make sure the server type is set to Micro Focus Enterprise Server and click Next again. I'll scroll down to the bottom of the third Add Server page, and I can optionally enter a description for my new server. Then I'll click Add to create the server. I have one more task with the new enterprise server. I need to ensure it's configured to work properly with a REST web service. A given enterprise server can be configured to work with either SOAP or REST web services, but not both. To check this for ESREST, I'll click on the Details button under Communications Processes. This page shows the communications listeners that are configured for ESREST. I'll click the Edit button next to the Web Services and J2EE listener. The first two choices for supported conversation type are the ones related to web services. The one labeled Web Services in J2EE is used for REST web services. The second option, SOAP and J2EE Legacy, is used to support SOAP web services. I see this listener is already configured to work with REST. I'll also specify which port this web service listener should use to accept communications from client programs. I'll set the port to 9003 by entering *:9003 in the endpoint address field. Finally, I'll click the Apply button at the bottom of the page to apply this update. I'm finished configuring my enterprise server. I'll click the Home link on the left menu to return to the home page listing the installed enterprise servers. Now it's time to start my enterprise server. I'll click the Start button next to ES-REST and click OK at the confirmation prompt. I'll keep clicking the refresh icon, and after a brief wait, ES-REST shows a status of started. Next, to specify the target enterprise server for my web service in Eclipse, I'll right-click on the service interface entry and choose Properties. I'll click the Change button next to the enterprise server name. From the list of currently defined enterprise servers, I'll choose ES-REST and click OK. Next, I'll choose the Application Files tab and choose the Legacy Application Needs Deploying radio button. Then I'll click the Add Files button to specify which files need to be deployed. I need to specify any files that will be needed by the deployed COBOL application at runtime. Holding the Control key, I'll select the IDY file and executable file for my program and click Open to complete my selection. I now see the selected files listed as application files that will be deployed. Finally, I'll click OK to complete this dialog. Now I can deploy my web service. I'll return to the COBOL Explorer view, right-click on the Web REST Calc service interface, and choose Deploy. Once the deploy is completed, the console view is updated to indicate that the deploy of the webrestcalc.car package has completed. To see this, click the down arrow for the list of consoles and choose the one for Service Interface. The console may contain some warnings about deployed files being renamed. These can be safely ignored. Also, after the deploy is completed, I can take a look at the JSON schema file generated for my web service. This file contains information about the operations and parameters that your web service accepts. You would provide the JSON schema file to someone developing a client that will invoke your web service. To see the JSON schema file, I'll first have to refresh the repos directory in my project. I do this by right-clicking and choosing Refresh. Then under Repos, I see a subdirectory named webrestcalc.deploy. Within that directory, I see that one of the files generated is the .json or JSON file for my web service. Now that the web service is deployed to my enterprise server, I can see information about the deployed web service in the Enterprise Server Administration web page. I'll locate the row for ES-REST, then look in the Objects column, and click on the Details button next to Services. This displays a list of the different services running under ES-REST. The last one shown is for my web service. I can see the service namespace, that the operations add and subtract are defined for my web service, and that these are defined for a REST service. I can also see the port number that will be used for sending requests to my web service, 9003. Most importantly, I can see that the current status of this service is available. My web service is ready to receive requests. While I'm here, I want to point out the delete button listed next to our web service entry. It is necessary to delete a deployed web service before you deploy it again. So if you need to make a change to your web service, you'll need to click this button first to delete the existing deployed service. Okay, now that the web service is deployed and available, it's time to test it. To help test the web service, Visual COBOL includes the functionality to generate a generic client program, which will pass the appropriate values for the request. To generate the test client, right-click on the service interface and choose Generate Client. I'll choose the option to generate the test client into a new project. I can name this project anything I'd like. I'll enter the name Calc Client and click OK to proceed with generating the client program. I now see that the new client project has been created in my workspace, and this project contains 2 new COBOL programs. Once again, since I have Eclipse configured to automatically build when my projects change, these programs have automatically been compiled. The client program with the name ending in app is the one I need to invoke. I'll right-click on it and choose Run as COBOL Application. The program executes in a separate window. It prompts for several values. For the first 3 values, I can just press Enter to accept the defaults. The URL to invoke for the web service defaults to the local machine where Visual COBOL is running, and the username and password fields are not needed in this case. Next, the client program displays a choice of the defined operations for this web service. I'll enter 1 to tell the client to invoke the add operation. The program now begins prompting for the values that are to be passed to the web service. I'll enter 25 as the value for field 1 and 8 as the value for field 2. At this point, our web service is invoked and passed the input values. It performs the calculation and returns the result, which the client displays. This completes this presentation on creating a REST web service from an existing COBOL program. Future videos in this series will cover related topics such as debugging a running web service and deploying a web service to a remote server. Thanks for watching.